Hello, and welcome to the video. Today, I'm painting up one more Kyrie Warrior. This one is Xiamara. At least, I think that's how the name is pronounced. I'm not very good at these names, but I try to do the best that I can with them. I really like the pose that they put this character in. It's a very dramatic pose. I think it's going to be kind of fun to paint. And as usual, we're going to be following the card art. So I start off by priming her gray. And I'm going to use brass on all of the armored parts. To be honest, I think that the armor in the card art is actually a little more brown, but this brass is sort of the closest that I had, and I think with doing a dark brown wash over top of it, I think that we can get pretty close to what's on the card art here. And you'll see as we go along, this isn't a very difficult model to paint. There's not a whole lot of different colors and textures that we have to go into. I just tried to do my best to get it to a good tabletop quality for all of my Heroscape figures. I figure at an arm's distance and you're playing the game, you don't have to have everything perfect on them to get good looking miniatures. For the wings, I'm going to start off with Ghost Gray, and I'm going to do a pretty heavy dry brush on the wings. I want some of the darkness to show underneath, so I don't want to just paint a solid layer on here. I'm just going with a heavy dry brush first. I do have to say that I regret not going with, or at least trying to experiment on one of these figures, doing like eagle wings or falcon patterns on the wings. I've seen a lot of other painters do that on them. You know, they put the brown stripes, they put the black dots on them, and they look fantastic. But I just decided to stick with the card art, where I kind of wish that I would have experimented a little bit with them. Maybe if I get a Reaper model for D&D or something like that, I might try to do more of a pattern on the wings. I don't know why I feel so compelled to just stick with the card art on a lot of these Heroscape miniatures. Now I'm going to come in with White Scar and do another dry brush over top just to bring the highlights up a little bit. And with any kind of dry brush, you want to leave a little bit of that, the last layer showing through underneath. You don't want to cover the entire thing. And this White Scar is such a bright white that it really is going to bring the highlighting up to where we're looking to get to. Now this is the last Heroscape miniature that I have to paint up. And I'm looking to pick up the new ones that are coming out soon. So once I get them, I'll start painting them up and get a couple more videos out on those. But there may be a little bit of a gap between Heroscape miniatures where, you know, I have plenty of other miniatures to be working on for Marvel Crisis Protocol, Warhammer I always have, Reaper for D&D. But just to let you know that if there is a little bit of a gap, there will be more Heroscape coming. Okay, for the cloth parts, we're going to use Angel Green. And I think that's kind of a fitting name, the Angel Green in there, since these figures resemble angels with the wings and all. I thought that was kind of ironic. But we're just going to paint the shirt that she has on, this dark green, and then also this cloak that she has underneath. Now, the cloak isn't really on the card art, so I just thought that this dark green would look good. I could see on the card art that her shirt is sort of a dark green, so I thought why not just go with that onto the cloak. Plus the dark green really matches her dark skin tone. I think that they go really well together and kind of complement each other. For the skin tone, I'm going to use Charred Brown. And I really like this as a base coat for darker skin tones. I think that it's easier to highlight and it just has a more natural look to it. Now sometimes I've actually used like a purple or a dark purple when I'm painting darker skin tones, and that actually kind of leaves an interesting base coat as well to build off of. I'm going to use leather brown now just to do a base coat for the gloves. Now I'm going to do one of my favorite things, and that's a heavy wash of Earthshade over most of the model here. I'm putting this on all of the armor. This is where we're going to take that brass color and make it more of a brownish color to match the card art. But this is also going to add into the shade, or all of the shadows and shading that we're looking for here. And again, with washes, just be careful that you're not going too heavy and it's going to pull, because if it pulls, it's going to make a mess. Just use your brush to soak up any excess. I also use it on the cloak and such to add the shadow. And this brown wash is actually going to help darken that dark green already, so that we won't have to worry too much about shading that later on. Here I'm going to use Nuln Oil, and I'm also using plate mail metal. I used the plate mail metal to do the sword, and I actually forgot to record the part where I'm actually using the Nuln Oil to do a wash over the wings. I like this wash on the wings because it really brings out all of the veins and the feathers and the shadows underneath. I'm not sure why, I just forgot to hit the record button for this part. Now I'm going to use White Scar to start building back up those highlights that the wash covered up on the wings. And this time I'm being a little bit more deliberate as to where I'm putting the highlights. I want the black to show underneath, to show all of the veins on the feathers and such. So I'm being a little bit more careful and a little more direct on where I'm putting this heavy dry brush. It's not, again, this is another time when it's not really a dry brush because it's too heavy, but I'm not putting down a solid coat of paint on here either. It's like a weird in-between thing that I use quite a bit. Here I'm going to use bright gold to come in and do the line highlights on the armor. The card art, they're definitely more pronounced, but I tried to do the best that I could with this bright gold and make the lines show through. I ended up almost getting like a dry brush on here with this, and just making sure to hit the highlights and the ridges on the armored parts. But for the most of it, I went through and just tried to paint them on as best that I could. They are on there. It's more subtle than what I think it should be. I could have maybe done something to pull them up a little bit more, but in my opinion, they came out looking well at the end. I'm using Angel Green again on all of the cloth parts to bring back the highlights that the wash sort of took away. And I'm trying to be a little more, I'm not painting it all over. I want that darkness in the recesses to keep the shadows and such. I'm just kind of more hitting the edges and the high points of the cloth. I'm also going to use this Angel Green to start hitting the jewels that she has on her armor. These actually added a really cool effect to the armor. I appreciate that the artist put this into the original card art there. I really like the emerald gems that are kind of placed throughout her armor here. I'm using Goblin Green to take up the cloth highlighting to the next level. And to be honest, this paint stinks. It doesn't cover very well. It's just not good. So I actually had to mix this in with the Angel Green to get it to cover it all. It was just too watery. It didn't want to, it just stinks. I have no other way of saying it. But mixing it in with the original color, it did help lighten that down some, and it made highlighting a little easier. But it ended up with a nice effect. It actually blended really well, in my opinion. So I was happy with the results. And as you'll see, I just really kept working it back and forth. And with painting cloaks and such, like cloth, to do the blending, you just kind of have to keep going back and forth. Like on my wet palette, I would just add more of the light to the dark and more dark to the light, and just really just keep at it, just keep working it and blending it a little bit, add a little bit darker, a little bit light to the parts that you need. But with a little bit of time though, you can get some decent looking cloaks and everything blended together. Just a little bit of leather brown here to hit the straps on her arm, and also to re-highlight the fingers on the gloves here. And I almost forgot to mention that I use this same color to highlight the face, just the nose, the cheeks, and the chin a little bit here. I'm going to use this Livery Green just to highlight the gems on her armor a little bit. I'm just putting down a tiny little dot on each one of them. I still want that dark green showing through for the majority of the gem. Now you could always take it up one more level and add a little spot of white to it if you wanted. But for a miniature that's going to be on the table, I didn't really think it was necessary for this one. A little bit of Brain Matter Beige to highlight the antlers on the helmet. I'm going to use White Scar to be very, very careful and just touch her eyes. I came back in then later on and just added a tiny little spot of the dark Angel Green that I have. I kind of thought that maybe like an emerald eye glow would sort of look cool with her, so that's what I went with. And finally, I'm going to use a little bit of burnt red to pick out the lips here. And when you're painting lips, in my opinion, I think it's better to be a little more subtle. You don't want to put the bright red lipstick on. It just doesn't look natural. But you still want to do something, especially for female miniatures. You want to do a little bit of something to bring some attention to the lips. Alright, and with that, she is all done. I'm really happy with how she came out. At first, I was a little bit worried because, usually my painting technique is so sloppy, and the beginning phases and putting down the base coats, it makes me worried sometimes that the miniature just isn't going to come out. But as other people have told me, even recently, trust the process. You just got to keep going with them, and usually they end up working out. I feel like I did a decent job at matching the card art. Again, the armor isn't quite spot on, but I figure it's close enough. You get the point of what I was going for. So yeah, I was happy with it. It was a fun miniature to paint. And I'm all done with my Kyrie Warriors now. And as I said, I'm waiting on the new ones. I think I'm going to get them at my local game store. I didn't pre-order them online or anything. I like to support my local game store, so I think I'm going to go through with them, and once I get them, I'll start putting out some more videos of the new figures. I'm looking forward to getting them. So with that, I want to thank you all for watching. I hope that you enjoyed watching me paint, and I hope that this inspires you to get some of your miniatures painted up. And with that, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.